In a world of massive, sprawling, open-world games that can take hundreds of hours to complete, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, or worse, left empty after finishing them, if you ever get there. But sometimes the most powerful gaming experiences come in smaller, more focused packages. Short games can, if done well, offer deeply personal stories, innovative gameplay, and impacts that last longer than the game itself, all while respecting your time. Whether you're a busy gamer juggling work, social commitments, family, or all of the above, or just someone tired of AAA games that can drag on without ever really delivering, this video is for you. How We Know We're Alive is a short but haunting narrative game that explores themes of loss, isolation, and the struggle for closure. If you're in the mood for something deeply introspective, something that makes you reflect not just on the story but on your own relationship with your past, this is a game that will stick with you long after you've finished. The game begins with a steady roll of a bus moving through the rain at night, the sound of the tyres against wet asphalt providing a quiet backdrop to an unfolding, distant conversation. A series of text messages from Maria appear on screen. She's asking, "What's going on? How is life treating you? What's the news?" Casual, almost loving questions from a friend trying to stay in touch. It feels like the kind of message you get from someone who means well, but whose attempts to reach out feel just a little too far removed. And in response, Sarah's messages are clipped, almost dismissive. Busy, too much work, not much to report. It's not that she doesn't care, but there's this undercurrent of avoidance. You've been here before, haven't you? You get these messages from a friend and you know they're trying to connect, but you're buried under your own life, too tired, too overwhelmed, and too distracted by other commitments. It's the conversation we've all been part of on either side, the gap between intention and action, the pull of responsibilities that keeps you from the people you want to reach out to. Maria's last message goes unanswered. "Sarah, there's something I want to talk to you about. Can you call me as soon as you can? ASAP when you get this, if that's okay. It's really important." The bus pulls up at the station. We step off into a rain-soaked town that feels like it's been frozen in time. The streets are wet and the air thick with nostalgia. This is where we meet Sarah, our protagonist. Sarah is a writer returning to her childhood hometown after years away, but she's not here for a reunion. Sarah has come back to confront the aftermath of a death, the death of her estranged best friend, Maria, the same Maria who we just viewed the text conversation with. We're in a small town called Herrljunga, stuck in the Swedish Bible Belt, seemingly isolated from the hustle and progress of the world. There's a palpable weight in the air, the kind you feel when you're back in a place that you left behind, but now it feels different, and yet the memories are still there, waiting, in the buildings and the spaces between the buildings, and in the faces of the townspeople she hasn't seen in years. As Sarah walks through Herrljunga, everything in her path seems to pulse with memories, each landmark acting as a silent reminder of her past. The gas station, once the place where they'd scrounge up enough money to trick strangers into buying them piss-weak 3.5% beer, stands as a faded relic of those carefree, reckless days. It's funny, isn't it? How something so small can carry so much weight. Then there's the pizzeria, where she and Maria would celebrate after their exams. Each slice a small victory and each bite a moment of teenage freedom. Sarah walks past an average blue car, one that was the same as her ex-boyfriend's back in the day. Or maybe it's just a ghost of him. Could it still be his, and could he still be here? And then Maria's parents' house, the same curtains, the same place, still holding on to the same sinister vibe that had always unsettled her. She notices it all, the permanence of things unchanged, and yet nothing about this place feels like home anymore. Sarah's thoughts drift as she moves down this winding path of nostalgia before she encounters Elsa, the owner of a small, rain-drenched flower shop. Elsa barely recognizes her, but then again, it has been 10 years since Sarah last stepped foot back in Herrljunga. Sarah remarks, "Doesn't feel like long enough to me," as if this town were something to leave behind, something she isn't ready to return to. Elsa scolds her for speaking so negatively about her own hometown. In the midst of this conversation, we learn that it's been exactly a year since Maria's passing, a detail that Sarah seems to brush off quickly, almost too quickly. She then purchases any old flowers and moves on. As we walk through the streets of Virunga, we pass by the familiar landmarks that fill Sarah with a mixture of nostalgia and discomfort. The illuminated sign of Pub Deset flickers in the dark, a reminder of the old watering hole where laughter once drowned out the weight of the world. Then there's the police station. Sarah's casual mention of it hints at a time where she spent more time there than she might have liked. A reminder of a past perhaps better left untouched. The church looms ahead, its towering spires sharp against the night sky. And it's here that Sarah remembers her graduation, a moment she promised herself would be the last time she'd ever step foot inside. These places are all landmarks of a past that Sarah hasn't quite reconciled with yet, but it's when Sarah approaches the graveyard that things start to feel more final. She pauses at her grandparents' grave, a quiet moment of reflection before walking past to find Maria's grave. She kneels and lays the flowers down gently, the weight of the moment heavy between them. There's a hesitation in Sarah's voice as she speaks, unsure that even talking to a grave is appropriate, but she wants to, and she needs to. She admits that she misses Maria, misses her in a way that's more painful now after everything. Sarah whispers an apology for not being there for the funeral, for not having the strength to face it. "I couldn't face it," she says softly, as though saying it out loud makes it more real. And then comes the question, "So here you are. You never really did leave after all. Just why?" There's a bitterness in her voice, a frustration at the permanence of it all. It's almost as if Sarah is asking herself, as much as Maria, how could she let this place, this town, this life, hold her down? Before she can say anything more, she stops, almost apologizing for her words, for everything left unsaid. The weight of grief hangs in the air as the moment stretches, raw and unfinished. And then a cutscene. We're in the familiar comfort of a bedroom, bathed in the warm orange glow of the sunset filtering through the trees outside. The dog sits on the floor wagging its tail, excitedly. Sarah is eagerly pushing Maria to try on an outfit, but Maria is hesitant, her energy lacking the same spark as Sarah's. Sarah, on the other hand, is talking about their shared dream of going to Stockholm, casually suggesting that they buy tickets now. Maria sits on the bed, slouched, her enthusiasm nowhere near matching Sarah's. And then, quietly, Maria stops her. She tells her she's pregnant. Sarah, quick to react, asks if it's that guy Jacobs, suggesting they could sort it out with the doctor's appointment. But Maria stops her again, this time more firmly. She doesn't want a doctor's appointment. She says, "We want this child." Sarah, confused and a little incredulous, asks, "What do you mean, we?" Maria, with quiet certainty, confirms that she means her and Jacob. And then, as if realizing something, Sarah brushes this off, cynically assuming Maria's parents, the Jesus freaks, are behind the decision, pushing her into it. But Maria stands her ground. She says it's her decision. In that moment, something clicks for Sarah. The dream, the plans they once talked about, the shared idea of freedom and adventure in Stockholm, suddenly feel like it's slipping away. She's lost it, not to the child, but to the choice that Maria has made to keep the child. Sarah storms off, hurt. She's left grappling with the feeling that Maria has ruined their shared dream. Why would she do that? Everything they'd hoped for, everything they'd dreamed together, has been irrevocably altered by a decision that Maria has made. We rejoin Sarah in the present day, standing at Maria's grave. She's alone, lost in thought, still grappling with the lingering mystery of Maria's final message, the text she was reading on the bus here. What could it have meant? And why was Maria out driving on that road? As Sarah reflects, she admits to herself that the whole thing doesn't feel like an accident. The puzzle is slowly starting to come together, piece by piece, Maria died in a car accident on a known dangerous stretch of road, but something about it just doesn't sit right with Sarah. This is the first time we hear her question whether it was truly an accident, and that shift marks a subtle but significant change in the story's tone. Sarah runs into Maria's sister, Lena, at the grave, an interaction that's awkward, filled with unspoken resentment between the two. Lena tells Sarah how much Maria missed her and asks why she wasn't there for the funeral. It's a moment of tension, and it's clear that there's a lot left unsaid between these two. We also learn that Maria's son, the child she had been pregnant with, is named Johannes. This conversation unravels more of Maria's life after Sarah left. Maria had joined a writing group, became more involved with the church, and had changed in ways Sarah hadn't anticipated. And it's here that we see Sarah's disillusionment begin to take shape. This life Maria built seems so far removed from the dreams they once shared. What happened here? What did this town do to you? As Sarah continues reconnecting with old faces, each person offering a piece of the puzzle, we get fragments of Maria's life, but no clear answers. The shopkeeper, a proud member of the town's writing group, speaks of Maria's work. Her writing was dark, obsessed with death, dreary, depressing, but there was talent there, she admits. Maria didn't actually attend the group, she says, the week that she died, and no one knows why. Some members of the group mentioned how Maria seemed off, distracted, like she wasn't herself in the days leading up to that fateful week. Then there's the former teacher, who shares that both Sarah and Maria had a dream of becoming writers. After Sarah left, he and Maria became close, and it's clear that her dreams were still alive in Sarah's absence, but had shifted somewhat. We have an abrasive conversation with Sten, a police officer who Sarah used to clash with, who rose through the ranks to become chief in Sarah's absence. Sarah questions Sten on what happened the night of the crash. It was on the main road to Stockholm. The weather was bad and it was dark. Perfect conditions for an accident. In these interactions, we get a lot of options to respond, whether we lie, brush things off, or are rude, or tell them the truth about our life in Stockholm. If you ever moved away from your hometown, you know exactly what it's like to encounter old faces and feel that pressure to exaggerate your success, to make it sound like everything went as planned. It's such a specific, relatable moment, and it feels incredibly personal. The game gives you the space to be honest in these moments, and for me, I found myself opening up, as if sharing my own experiences of leaving home, how things didn't always go as you imagined, how it can feel lonely, and how the dreams you had might not turn out the way you'd hoped. This is one of those rare, niche moments in the game that really pulls you in, making the brief 50-minute runtime feel grounded and emotionally resonant. It's not just about uncovering Maria's past, it's about facing the complex, bittersweet reality of our own lives. We walk back through town to Maria's parents' house, the place where Maria had been living with Jacob and Johannes. Sarah lets herself in, and she's met to Jacob's surprise, the same surprise she felt from nearly everyone in town after 10 years of being gone. It's clear the years have created distance, not just physically, but emotionally, between Sarah and everything and everyone she used to know here. As she takes in the house, Sarah reflects on how strange it feels to be back. The walls and rooms are familiar, yet everything about them feels alien. It's an awkward encounter, and one that I know all too well. Having been in Sarah's shoes, returning to a place that once felt like a second home after years away, there's a strange, almost philosophical discomfort to it. It's uncanny. The way the place is the same, yet the people and feelings tied to it have shifted. Time has moved on without you. Your hometown has become something else entirely. A new hometown for those who stayed, no longer yours. Shops have changed hands, old houses are painted new colours, and the people you remember have lives that you don't recognise. It seems obvious, almost inevitable that this would happen, but standing in the middle of it is something else entirely. There's a quiet unease in realising that the world didn't pause for you. It kept evolving, growing, forgetting. That feeling is something Sarah grapples with in this moment. And for those of us who have experienced it, it's uncomfortably familiar. Sarah wants to go up to Maria's room. On the way through the cramped corridors, we pass a picture of Maria. Sarah noting that the jumper she's wearing in the photo might have been hers, but she can't remember whose it was originally, only that they used to borrow it off each other regularly. Moments like these are what astound me about this game. Another incredibly niche but relatable point about old friendships. I too had this item of clothing with an old friend. A pair of jeans that we used to fight over, both convinced we were the owners, but who the rightful owner was buried under years of busy memories, not close enough to the surface to be recalled by either of us. It was ours. When we reach Maria's room, Sarah is taken aback that it hasn't changed at all. We remark that it's sad. We observe some of the books she owned and some papers that showed she was really still writing. A photograph still stands on her desk of Maria and Sarah. A beautiful but gentle guitar riff fades in as we flash back to the two sitting atop a car in front of a viewpoint over the town. Sarah dreaming of the future and viewing the town negatively, eager to leave. The conversation reveals to us that Sarah was so wrapped up in her dream that she may have ignored the signs that Maria was wrapped up in her own little dream, one with Jacob, the dumb moped guy, in her words. These flashbacks are great at revealing to the player that Sarah is most probably an unreliable narrator, that maybe Maria wanted the life here at home. This scene also resonated with me. I remember going to a viewpoint with my best friend in my hometown, always talking about a future and what our lives are going to become. I remember ignoring my friend's wishes because I wanted him to come along so badly with my plans. This, again, resonated with me a lot. We're pulled back to Maria's room, where a small, forgotten clue catches Sarah's attention. A receipt on the floor. 2 bottles of vodka, purchased from the liquor store the night of the accident. The detail is shocking. Maria hated vodka. Why would she have bought it? And with that question comes an even darker one. Could this mean the crash wasn't an accident? Was Maria in trouble that night in ways that no one saw? The threads of the mystery are tightening, and Sarah begins to put the pieces together. She asks about Johannes and Jakob. Where were they on the day of the accident? It turns out that Maria had bought them tickets to a hockey game, sending them away. Did she want them out of the house for some reason? As Sarah unravels these details, a picture begins to emerge, stark and painful. The town, this place Sarah always feared, had finally gotten to Maria. All the signs point to it. Sarah finds herself both vindicated and horrified. Her worst fears were right. She goes to Elsa, one of the last people to see Maria alive, and asks if she saw Maria on that fateful day. Elsa remembers her passing by with 2 large bottles of alcohol, looking sneaky, but thought nothing of it at the time. It seems painfully obvious to Sarah now. Why didn't anyone realise Maria was a risk to herself? Why didn't anyone step in? Later, she runs into her old teacher outside the pub. He offers her a cigarette, and she asks where he was that night. His answer is chilling. How could I forget? Maria had invited everyone, her teacher, her family, her friends, to her house that evening, saying that she had a surprise for them. But she never told anyone what that surprise was. The teacher admits that in the grief of the aftermath, he'd never stopped to think why she had all called them together. For Sarah, it's painfully obvious now. Standing outside of the church, Sarah is overcome. I could have helped, she whispers. I could have stopped you. Why did no one else stop you? How can I make it up to you? What should I do? The guilt, the weight of hindsight crashes down on her. She decides that no matter how painful it is, people deserve to know the truth about what really happened to Maria. She goes to Lena, still standing at the grave in the rain, and tells her everything. Sarah lays it all bare. Maria's life had become unbearable. She was trapped by her circumstances, isolated, spiraling deeper into a depression. No one noticed, and it led to her death. Sarah admits her own failings, apologising to Lena for not being there, for not stopping it. But Lena's reaction is not what Sarah expected. Calmly, she tells Sarah to breathe, to come with her. Sarah hesitates, reluctant, but Lena insists, leading her into the church.
Look around. Look at all these candles people have lit. Flowers, letters, pictures of her. Did you think she wasn't loved? Isn't missed by everyone in Harunga every single day? Mourned by countless people here that you never bothered to get to know?
But...
No, Sarah. There is no but. You think what? That after you left her here all those years ago that she just ground to a halt? That her life here can only have been small and sad by comparison to yours?
No, Lena. Let me explain the evidence.
The evidence? Who do you think you are? What do you think is happening here? This is real life, Sarah. Real life in which my beautiful baby sister died in a car accident.
But why did she buy all that vodka?
Vodka? What the hell are you talking about?
The receipts in her room for all that alcohol, and the party, her gathering you all together so that when she died,
For God's sake.
and the stuff she was writing, those dark poems.
What? Writing about death means you're going to kill yourself? How can you? The party. Alright, I'll tell you what the party was for. She'd been working on a book. A novel, I guess. She hadn't let me read it. She sent samples to an agent who wanted to take her on. That's what the party was for. To share her good news. Yes.
Why did Philippe not know that?
Philippe? She'd only told me. I never did tell him. It would have broken his heart.
But that's wonderful.
Many things in her life were wonderful, Sarah. It's a pity you hated this place too much to find that out.
But then why was she out on that road? Where was she going? Lena?
Look, please understand that there were 2 reasons I didn't share this with you before. Firstly, it's upsetting, and secondly, I didn't think you deserved to know any more about her life, to be honest.
Please, Lena, where was she going?
She was going to Stockholm. To find you. She wanted to, I don't know, surprise you with her good news. She said you were stuck in your office all weekend. So she was going to go shopping in the city and tell you her news in person, and then get back in time for the party. I told her it was a ridiculous idea, but she was really set on it, on sharing it with you. So yes, that is why she was out on the road that day. You are why.
I don't know what to say.
I do. You thought it was impossible that living here could make someone happy, that having a house and a son and a family could make someone complete.
I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing.
What, by coming up here to play detective? You saw what you wanted to see. And what you wanted to see was confirmation that you chose the right path. And she didn't.
Lena, I'm so sorry.
Don't be. It's too late for any of that. The service will be starting soon. I think it would be best if you didn't stay.
I'm so sorry, Lena.
Goodbye, Sarah.
We walk off, a total destruction of our character having taken place, showing that reality can always be one thing, but our perception of that reality can be many things. When we come outside, the ever-present rain has stopped and the birds are tweeting. We trudge through the graveyard to Maria. Sarah asks for forgiveness, the guilt of her death weighing heavy. Her selfishness contributed to Maria's death. Her death happened because Sarah was busy living her fake and hollow dream in Stockholm. Sarah doesn't know what to say, incoherently starting an apologetic trail of thought before not being able to finish it. Sarah, flustered, apologizes, says she loves her, congratulates her on her book, then leaves. She finds herself at a viewpoint where her and Maria once sat. She hops on top of the car and looks over her hometown. The title, How We Know We're Alive, is deceptively simple, but it holds within it an existential weight that lingers long after the game ends. It isn't just about the mechanics of living, breathing, eating, existing, but about the intangible, often painful experiences that remind us that we're alive. Grief, love, regret, and the connections we make or fail to make with others. The phrase feels like less of a statement and more of a question, posed not just to the player, but to the protagonist herself. For Sarah, the question is central to her journey. As she returns to her hometown, she's forced to reckon with the life she left behind and the people she abandoned. Maria, the friend she once shared dreams with, is gone, and her absence pulls Sarah into a reflection not just on Maria's life, but on her own. Was Maria really living, trapped in this small town, burdened by expectations and circumstance? No. She was happy. She had a loving family and finally had achieved the dream that they both shared before it was tragically ended too soon. On the other side of the coin, is Sarah really alive, chasing an idealized dream in Stockholm that has left her hollow and detached? The title is a meditation on this. What does it mean to truly live, and how do we know when we've stopped? The game doesn't give us neat answers. Instead, it invites us to sit in the ambiguity. Maria's life, revealed through scraps of memory and whispered suspicions, is both tragic and profound, while Sarah's guilt acts as a mirror for our own regrets and losses. How We Know We're Alive reminds us that the moments that hurt the most, the ones that linger in the air and refuse to settle, are often the ones that shape us. It's in that ache and that uncertainty that we can truly feel what it means to be alive. How We Know We're Alive lasts all of 45 minutes, but the feeling it has given me is still present weeks after I first played. My perception of the world has evolved following my playthrough of this game, and the lessons it has taught me about how I perceive my old friends and my hometown will make me a happier person, and for that, I'm grateful. The opening moments of A Short Hike are quiet, almost mundane. Claire, a young bird, sits in the passenger seat of a car on her way to Hawk Peak Provincial Park. Her mum is driving and they exchange a few words, a casual, familiar conversation about the day ahead. It's so understated that you might not think much of it first, but beneath this simplicity is something quietly profound. The feeling of arriving at a place both familiar and new. You learn that Claire is here for summer, staying with her aunt, a park ranger. Her immediate goal? To get phone signal. It's a small problem that many of us can relate to, but it sets the stage for something much bigger. Because whilst Claire is initially focused on checking her phone, the game gently guides her towards something far more meaningful. What's striking about this opening is how it establishes tone without needing spectacle. There's no grand exposition, no urgent quest, just a park to explore with people to meet and trails to follow. It's not just about where you're going, it's about the freedom to take your time, to meander, to notice the small details. The game quietly tells you, you don't have to rush. You don't even need to climb the mountain right now. The opening works because it's not really about the plot, it's about a feeling. That mix of curiosity and calm, of standing at the edge of a place that feels vast and full of potential. From the very beginning, A Short Hike asks you to do something rare in games, and maybe even in life, to slow down, to breathe, and to notice. And in that simplicity, it sets the stage for a journey that feels, in its own quiet way, exhilarating. One of the first things you'll learn to do in A Short Hike is rock climbing, through a rather fun interaction with what I think is a rhino and a squirrel. The mechanic itself is straightforward. You climb using golden feathers to measure your stamina. Run out of feathers and you'll need to stop and rest, or fall if there's nowhere to rest. On paper, it's not that different from climbing in other games, but in A Short Hike, the stakes are refreshingly low. There's no life or death drama, no towering cliffs that threaten doom. The flying or gliding mechanic is also fueled by these golden feathers. You find these naturally through Hawk Peak Provincial Park, and they are your main tool for progressing to the top. You'll collect more of these as you go, and you'll need at least 7 to conquer the peak. And when you fail, and you will fail, it never feels punishing. The world invites you to try again, to approach the climb from a new angle, or simply rest before giving it another shot. It's a reminder that progress doesn't always have to be linear. There's a moment in A Short Hike where you meet a painter, perched at the edge of a cliff, trying to capture the beauty of Hawk Peak. Like so many encounters in this game, it starts casually, a simple conversation. But what unfolds is a quiet reflection on creativity, perception, and the relationship between art and nature. The painter isn't just here to create, they're here to feel. They're chasing something deeper than a perfect landscape. Their quest for the right perspective, the right light, feels familiar, especially for anyone who's tried to create something meaningful, and yet they're not overly serious about it. Their art feels more like they're having a conversation with their environment, trying to get an answer from it. What's beautiful about this quest is its simplicity. There's no elaborate task or puzzle, just a moment of shared discovery. You're not really helping the painter in a traditional sense. You're simply sharing in their wonder, seeing the world through their eyes. The act of finding the perfect view becomes an act of collaboration, a reminder that art is often as much about the process as the result. The painter at the end of this quest is now not worried about what he's painting, but how he feels when he's doing it. A beautiful resolution to a simple and cozy quest. Elsewhere in Hawk Peak Park, you can encounter a rabbit that would like to challenge you to a parkour race. A parkour race in a short hike is one of those moments where the game's quiet charm transforms into something more energetic, more competitive. You meet a confident rabbit who challenges you to a race, and suddenly this peaceful hike becomes a test of speed and strategy. The race is chaotic, but in the best way. You're scrambling up cliffs, dashing across narrow paths, and trying to outpace someone who seems to know the terrain better than you. But that's what makes it so fun, isn't it? What I like about this quest is how the game makes you use every tool that it's already given to you. This is a short hike at its most kinetic. Your stamina feathers, your gliding, your climbing skills, and your sprinting skills all come together in a frantic but joyous push to the finish line. What's brilliant about this race is how it blends competition with exploration. Winning isn't just about being fast, it's about knowing where you're going. And knowing where you're going only usually comes after you've run the race once. After you've done it once, you're ready to beat them on the second try, unless you get very lucky or you're just really good at games. I, however, am not. So it usually took me 1 or 2 tries before I could beat the rabbit. Anyway, the outcome of the race almost doesn't matter. Whether you win or lose, the rabbit's enthusiasm remains infectious. They're not here to humiliate you, they're here to share in the joy of movement, of pushing yourself just a little further than you thought you could. In a short hike, there's no urgency to do anything, and yet you somehow find yourself doing everything. And sometimes everything means something as small and as perfect as stickball. Stickball is one of those moments in a short hike that is entirely optional, but like so much in this game, it doesn't feel optional. It feels kind of irresistible. A kid enthusiastically explains the rules of their made-up game, and even though you've never played it before, you know exactly how it works. You're transported back to summer days when sticks were bats, rocks were bases, and the entire world was a playground. What's wonderful about stickball is how it captures the sheer joy of play. No scoreboard, no progression system. It's just you, your opponent, and a shared moment of pure, unfiltered fun. And in that simplicity, it reminds us why we play games in the first place. Stickball isn't about mastery, it's about connection. The other NPC cheers for you, even when you're terrible, or they laugh at their own mistakes. It's the kind of interaction that feels so small and yet so human. In this quiet world of trails and lakes, stickball becomes a little pocket of energy, a reminder that sometimes the most memorable moments are the ones that don't mean much at all. It's funny, when I think about a short hike, I don't just think about the mountain, I think about stickball, about a kid and a game and a fleeting beautiful moment of play that somehow feels as big as the entire world. One of the first moments in a short hike is actually when you're asked to find some shells. A young beachgoer lounging in the sand casually mentions needing a lot of them. It's not a demand, and there's no looming reward teased for completing the task. It's just something you can do, but something that will probably take your whole playtime to achieve. At first, this might seem like just another fetch quest, a staple of video games as old as the medium itself. But in a short hike, even the simplest objectives are transformed by the world around them. The shells aren't marked on your map, and no glowing icons point you in their direction. Instead, you're left to wander, to stumble across them naturally, the way you might when walking along a beach in real life. When you finally return with all the shells, the moment is small but sweet. There's no elaborate payoff, just a simple thank you, and the quiet satisfaction of having helped someone. And yet, the simplicity feels more meaningful than any reward could. Oh wait, no, sorry. The beachgoer gives you a shell necklace to give to Ranger May. May absolutely loves the necklace so much that she gives you a golden feather. So yeah, there is a reward. The climb to Hawk Peak is deceptively simple. You know from the beginning that reaching the summit is your goal, but a short hike makes sure that goal never feels urgent. It's not about rushing to the top, it's about the path you take to get there. And when you finally do reach the peak, the game delivers an ending that's as quiet and unassuming as the journey itself. Yet it holds a depth that's hard to put into words. At the summit, Claire's reason for climbing is finally fulfilled. She gets a phone signal. It's such a mundane goal, especially compared to what we've been conditioned to expect from video games. There's no treasure waiting for her, no ancient secret to uncover, just the ability to make a phone call. But it's not the why that matters, it's the how. She calls her mum. The conversation is brief, tender, and reassuring. Her mum tells her that she's okay, and you can sense the relief in Claire. Claire's mum had an operation, but she didn't tell Claire about it because she knew she can get worked up. They have a heartfelt conversation. Claire's mum saying how Claire is growing up so fast, and that she's ready to fly the nest. and Claire saying that she'll always need her mum, no matter how old she is. Claire is a little upset that her mum didn't tell her about the operation. We, the player, are finding out about this now for the first time too. With that risk to a loving family member, we're always reminded and compelled emotionally to respond with just how much that person means to us. It's a reminder of why she came to Hawk Peak in the first place, to reconnect, not just with her mum, but with the world around her and herself. In that moment, the journey feels complete, not because of the call only, but also because of everything that led to it. Claire tells her mum she loves her, and they say their goodbyes for now. Claire then catches a ride on an updraft from the geyser at the peak. The descent should be an exhilarating and liberating experience, unless you were like me and forgot to glide. So instead, you just plop into the ocean below. But after the climb, after all the small moments of connection, exploration and joy, the flight back down feels like a distillation of freedom. No pressure, no objectives, just you, passing by the world you've come to know so intimately. A short hike ends in the way it began, right by Aunt May by a fire, softly, quietly, but with a profound understanding of what matters. It's not the summit itself that lingers with you, but the journey, the people you meet, and the moments you take with you. The ending isn't an answer, it's a feeling, and that feeling is enough. Gorogoa is one of those rare games that invites you to slow down, to reflect, and to engage with something deeply mysterious. The story is minimalist but profound, a quiet narrative that you piece together almost like a puzzle, fitting together moments and symbols that defy immediate understanding, yet gradually reveal a greater meaning the more you immerse yourself in it. At its surface, Gorogoa appears to be a simple story about a young boy, an enigmatic creature, and the world around them. But the brilliance of the narrative lies in how it unfolds through the gameplay itself, through the intricate puzzles that require you to manipulate and combine images in ways that feel like both a meditation and an exploration. The game doesn't explain itself outright. Instead, it demands that you read between the lines, allowing you to engage not just with the visual storytelling, but with the act of understanding the game itself. The beauty of Gorogoa's story is how it speaks to universal themes: childhood, curiosity, and the passage of time, and the search for meaning. The images are deceptively simple at first, drawn with a childlike quality, yet suffused with layers of metaphor and emotion. As the boy navigates through a world of seemingly disconnected moments, you realize that the story is more about the journey of discovery than about anyone or any destination. It's about how meaning is constructed, how our perceptions shift, and how the very act of seeking or experiencing and interpreting shapes us. What's most striking about Gorogoa is the refusal to hand you answers. It trusts you to find your own way through its visual language, and in doing so it turns the act of playing into a kind of quiet contemplation. The connections you make between the images are not just puzzles to solve, but metaphors for the way we interpret the world around us. Every puzzle feels like an unfolding story, a moment of clarity, a moment of confusion, and ultimately what the game leaves you with is a sense of completion, not just in terms of solving puzzles, but in the way that it asks you to contemplate the larger questions of life, purpose, and existence. In a world of narrative-driven games that often feel like they're giving you all of the answers, Gorogoa stands apart in its restraint. It's a game about quiet moments, small connections, and the sometimes elusive nature of understanding. It doesn't rush to tell you its story. Instead, it lets you experience it piece by piece. And in that experience, you realize that the story is yours to complete, your own interpretation to weave into the images, much like a piece of art that leaves space for the viewer to add their own meaning. Gorogoa's art style is one of its most distinctive features, a beautifully minimalist, almost childlike quality that masks a profound depth beneath its simplicity. It's a game where the visuals don't just serve as a backdrop to the story, they are the story. Every image, every frame is literally a carefully composed painting, and yet they exist in a world that constantly shifts and evolves and connects. It's as if the game is asking you to rethink the very concept of what an image can do, and how art can interact with itself and with the player. What really sets Gorogoa's art apart is the way that it plays with the concept of space itself. The game's most unique feature, the manipulation of its panels to solve the puzzle, turns the idea of perspective into something interactive. You can zoom in, shift, and combine images in ways that feel like altering the fabric of the world and time itself. It's not just a puzzle game, it's a meditation on how images can change, grow, and connect. You're not merely navigating a static world, you're actively reshaping the way you perceive it, manipulating the art to tell a different story each time you engage with it. One thing that I like about Gorogoa that's more about my personal experience with it is the way that it feels like you're sifting and sorting through someone's memories, fragmented, incomplete, yet still vivid and meaningful, connecting memories in different ways that lead to meaning and tell a story. The beauty of Gorogoa lies not only in its stunning visuals and poetic but vague storytelling, but also in the way that it challenges you to think. The puzzles in this game aren't difficult in the traditional sense. There's no need for very fast reflexes or encyclopedic knowledge, but they're difficult because they ask something far more elusive of the player. They ask you to see differently. There's a moment in Gorogoa, one of those rare moments of clarity where everything just clicks. For me, it happened during a puzzle involving a ball. On one panel, I was in a wartime setting, watching a ball perched on a shelf, falling down and repeatedly landing in a jar. On another panel, I was gazing at the same boy, now in a quieter, distant time, studying. The connection wasn't immediately obvious. Gorogoa rarely makes its solutions obvious, but then I noticed something. A ribbon in one panel matched the draped flag of a building in the other. I lined them up, and suddenly the ball fell, not just within its own panel, but into another panel entirely. It was a moment of revelation. My brain shifted gears. I felt like I was finally thinking with portals. I wasn't just solving puzzles anymore, I was thinking in different dimensions, navigating a world where time and space had intertwined. But it wasn't over. The ball didn't stop. It wasn't done. There were more flags at the bottom of the panel, aligning it with others in the first. It was about timing now, guiding the ball across panels step by step until finally it completed its journey. The ball then cracked a moth's cage. The moth was freed to reach the light. I zoomed in on its intricate design, removed its wing, zoomed back out and aligned the panels further. The puzzle wasn't just solved, it was revealed, like peeling back layers of meaning. I finally understood. Another example stands out, this time with the clock tower puzzle. I discovered a note in a briefcase. It scrawled time different to the hands on the clock. It was a clue, a breadcrumb. Somewhere I knew I'd have to find the clock's missing pieces. In one panel, a red hand sat on a piece of antique chemistry equipment. Its direction wrong though, compared to the note we saw earlier. I zoomed in on the clock tower, removed its frame, zoomed back out, and found myself staring at a desk. There I found a blue hand pointing the wrong way too. The blue hand, I realised, was drawn to the blue star. A star nestled in another panel, covered in pins and paper clips. By rearranging them, I could redirect the hand's position, solving the first half of the puzzle. The red hand though, that was another story. It looked like a pressure gauge of sorts, and I needed to increase the pressure to make it point the way that I wanted it to. This led me to a literal fireplace, and the realization that my failure to combine pieces wasn't a fault in logic, but in perspective. When I zoomed out, it all fell into place. And when it did, pure satisfaction. The clock came together, the boy found the star, and I aligned it with the moon on a globe. The moth settled, the puzzle wasn't just solved, it became part of a greater tapestry. These moments aren't just about solving puzzles, they're about seeing. Gorogoa doesn't tell you what to do, it trusts you to find your way. And when you do, the solutions feel earned, not given. The puzzles are intuitive, fair, and so deeply tied to the game's world that they never feel arbitrary. If these examples sound challenging, it's because they are, but they're also exhilarating, offering some of the most satisfying problem-solving I've ever experienced. And here's the best part. Gorogoa only gets more intricate and more layered and more rewarding as it goes on. But what makes these puzzles so brilliant and so difficult is that they're entirely visual. There are no instructions, no tutorials. You're left to figure out not only how to solve the puzzle, but what the puzzle even is. This lack of guidance might frustrate some players, but it's what makes Gorogoa so engaging. The game respects your intelligence, trusting you to observe, experiment, and ultimately understand. The difficulty in Gorogoa is never artificial. It's never about obfuscation for the sake of padding. Instead, it's a difficulty born from the game's insistence that you see the world differently. And when you do, when you finally figure out how to align those panels, it feels like you've unlocked not just the puzzle, but a deeper truth about how everything in this world is connected. And isn't that in a way what we're all trying to do? Find the connections that make everything make sense? This segment of the video is going to be relatively short because the beauty of Gorogoa really has to be felt firsthand for you to understand why it's such a wonderful way to spend a couple of hours of your time. And there we have it, short games that have left a lasting impression on me. From the deep, introspective epiphany I felt while playing How We Know We're Alive, to the joyous sense of decompression I experienced in a short hike. From the mind-bending narrative and stunning art of Gorogoa, these games, despite their brevity, manage to leave impressions that rival, if not surpass, those of their longer counterparts. What I hope to highlight in this video is that short games can have just as much emotional resonance and depth as the sprawling epics that dominate the industry today. In a video game market oversaturated with content, where so many titles demand 60 or more hours of your time just to justify their price tags, the focus on why we play games in the first place can feel lost. Many of these long modern games are designed to keep you playing, to keep you addicted, not for your benefit, but for theirs. But then there are games like these, games that exist not to stretch themselves thin, but to deliver something meaningful, something personal, something that respects your time. They remind us that a game doesn't have to be long to leave a lasting impression. It just has to be intentional, heartfelt, and crafted with care. My name is The Below Average Gamer. Thank you so much for watching if you still are at this point. Don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos similar to this one. Thank you so much for watching again. Peace.
Isn't missed by everyone in Haraguna every single day.
Harunga. Isn't missed by everyone in Harunga every single day.
Isn't missed by... Sorry.
Stop smiling.
You do want to tell me in advance how to say it.
That's how it sounds.
What do I say? Harunga.
Harunga.